In a village called Umuofia, nestled within the heart of Igboland, the sun rose each morning to illuminate a world rich with tradition and communal harmony. Umuofia was known far and wide for its warriors, and none was more renowned than Okonkwo, a man of immense strength and ambition. Okonkwo's fame was built on his personal achievements and his determination to rise above the shame of his father, Onoka, who was known for his laziness and debts. One evening, as the village gathered for the annual Yam festival, the village priestess, Chilo, entered a trance. Her voice, though hers, echoed with the wisdom of the gods. "A storm is coming to Umuofia," she prophesied, "a storm that will test the strength of our people and the very fabric of our existence." The villagers listened in silence, the weight of her words settling over them like a heavy mist. Okonkwo, standing tall among the men, felt a shiver run down his spine. He was not one to believe in mere words, yet Chilo's proclamations had a way of embedding themselves into the minds of those who heard them. He vowed then and there to prepare for whatever trials the gods might send. Days turned into weeks, and the life in Umuofia continued with its usual rhythm. Okonkwo worked tirelessly on his farm, cultivating his yam crops with the precision and care of a master craftsman. Yams, the king of crops, were a man's wealth and status in Igbo society. Okonkwo's barns were filled with them, testament to his hard work and unyielding spirit. However, the peace of the village was soon disturbed by an unexpected event. A neighboring clan had killed a daughter of Umuofia. This act of violence was a grave offense, demanding retribution. The village elders convened a council, and it was decided that to avoid war, the offending village would offer a virgin and a young boy to Umuofia as compensation. The boy, Ikemefuna, came to live in Okonkwo's household. Though initially an outsider, he quickly became like a son to Okonkwo, more so than his own son, Nwoye. Ikemefuna's presence brought a sense of completeness to the family, but the villagers never forgot Chilo's prophecy. The storm, they believed, had begun to gather strength. Ikemefuna adapted well to his new life. He was a bright and cheerful boy, endearing himself to Okonkwo's family and the entire village. Nwoye, who had always been a source of disappointment to Okonkwo due to his perceived weakness, found in Ikemefuna a brother and a role model. The two boys were inseparable, spending their days working, playing, and learning together. Okonkwo, observing the changes in his son, felt a flicker of pride. He believed that Ikemefuna was influencing Nwoye in a positive way, making him more masculine and strong. Okonkwo's harshness towards his son began to soften, though he never openly showed it. Deep down, he knew he could never truly express affection. It was a sign of weakness, something he had vowed never to show. Life seemed almost idyllic, but beneath the surface, Okonkwo was restless. He could not shake off the ominous feeling that Chilo's prophecy still hung over them. Despite the tranquility, he sensed that something was about to change. As the seasons changed, the time came for Umuofia to fulfill its traditional obligations. The Oracle of the Hills and Caves decreed that Ikemefuna must be sacrificed to appease the gods. This decision was communicated to the village elders and, ultimately, to Okonkwo. The news struck him like a thunderbolt. Ikemefuna, whom he had come to see as a son, was to be killed. The very thought filled him with dread, yet he knew he could not defy the oracle's command. The village elders decided that the deed would be carried out outside the village, far from the eyes of the women and children. Okonkwo was told to stay out of it, but his pride and fear of appearing weak pushed him to join the men who would lead Ikemefuna to his fate. The boy, unsuspecting, walked beside Okonkwo, his trust unwavering. As they reached the forest, the men fell upon Ikemefuna with their machetes. In his confusion and pain, he cried out for Okonkwo, calling him father. It was then that Okonkwo, in a moment of blind determination to prove his strength, struck the final blow. Ikemefuna's lifeless body fell to the ground, and with it, a piece of Okonkwo's soul. The death of Ikemefuna cast a long shadow over Okonkwo's household. Nwoye, in particular, was deeply affected. He could not understand why his brother had to die and felt a coldness settle in his heart, a disconnect from the customs and traditions of his people. This internal conflict began to distance him further from his father, whose actions he could neither comprehend nor forgive. Okonkwo, meanwhile, tried to bury his grief in work. but the boy's death haunted him. He saw Ikemefuna's face in his dreams and heard his cries in the stillness of the night. Despite his efforts to remain stoic, the burden of guilt weighed heavily on him. He became more irritable and short-tempered, his anger often spilling over onto his family and those around him. The village, too, seemed to sense a change. Though life continued, there was an undercurrent of unease. The prophecy of the storm seemed to be coming true in ways none had anticipated. The harmony that once defined Umuofia was beginning to fray, one thread at a time. Time, however, moved on, and with it, the events of the past began to fade into memory. Umuofia continued its cycle of planting and harvest, births and deaths, joy and sorrow. Okonkwo worked harder than ever, determined to regain his sense of purpose and honor. He threw himself into village affairs, becoming a respected voice among the elders and a fierce defender of tradition. One day, a group of strangers arrived in the village. They were white men, missionaries who spoke of a new religion and a different God. They preached about love and forgiveness, concepts that were foreign to many in Umuofia. At first, the villagers were wary and curious. Some were drawn to the new faith, intrigued by its promises of equality and eternal life. Nwoye, still struggling with the trauma of Ikemefuna's death and his father's harshness, found solace in the missionaries' words. He began attending their gatherings, feeling a sense of belonging and understanding that he had never felt before. Okonkwo, upon discovering this, was furious. He saw the new religion as a threat to the very core of their society and his authority. As more villagers began converting to Christianity, tensions in Umuofia grew. The traditionalists, led by men like Okonkwo, saw the new religion as an insidious force, undermining their customs and beliefs. The converts, on the other hand, found hope and solace in the new faith, especially those who had felt marginalized or oppressed under the old ways. The village was slowly being split into two factions. Okonkwo's anger grew as he saw old friends and even family members embracing the new religion. He confronted Nwoye, demanding that he renounce the Christians and return to the old ways. But Nwoye, having found his voice and courage in the new faith, stood firm. The confrontation ended with Nwoye leaving his father's house, a final act of defiance that shattered the last remnants of their relationship. Okonkwo's heart hardened further. He saw Nwoye's actions as the ultimate betrayal, a personal affront to his authority and the traditions he held dear. The storm that Chilo had prophesied seemed to be tearing his life apart, piece by piece. The missionaries established a foothold in Umuofia, building a church and a school. They offered education and medical care, winning over more converts each day. Their influence extended beyond religion, impacting the social and political structures of the village. The colonial government, working in tandem with the missionaries, began to exert control over the region. Okonkwo watched with growing despair as the world he knew was changing. He felt powerless against the tide of transformation sweeping through Umuofia. The new order brought with it laws and customs that conflicted with the traditional ways. Disputes were now settled in the white man's court, undermining the authority of the village elders. Despite his efforts to resist, Okonkwo found himself increasingly isolated. His friends and allies were dwindling, either converting to Christianity or accepting the new ways as inevitable. His once formidable presence in the village was diminishing, leaving him a shadow of the man he once was. Determined not to go down without a fight, Okonkwo decided to take action. He rallied the remaining traditionalists, urging them to resist the encroaching influence of the missionaries and the colonial government. They began planning acts of defiance, hoping to reclaim their autonomy and preserve their way of life. One night, under the cover of darkness, Okonkwo and his followers destroyed the church, a symbol of the new order that had disrupted their lives. The act was bold, but it had severe repercussions. The colonial authorities responded swiftly and harshly, arresting the leaders of the resistance, including Okonkwo. The trial was swift, and the punishment severe. Okonkwo and the others were humiliated, publicly flogged, and fined. This act of retribution further demoralized the traditionalists and emboldened the converts. The balance of power had shifted irreversibly, and Okonkwo knew it. Upon his release, Okonkwo returned to a village that no longer felt like home. The chasm between the traditionalists and the converts had widened, creating a palpable tension in Umuofia. Okonkwo's spirit, once unbreakable, was now fractured. He felt betrayed by his own people and powerless to halt the changes overtaking his world. His anger turned inward, becoming a smoldering rage that threatened to consume him. He clung to the remnants of his authority and pride, but the isolation and rejection gnawed at him. The storm, he realized, had not just been about the external changes, it had also been a profound internal struggle, a battle between holding on to the past and accepting the future. The villagers, sensing the deepening divide, began to wonder about their identity and future. The elders, who had once been the ultimate authority, were now challenged by a new generation influenced by different values and beliefs. The harmony that had once defined Umuofia was now a distant memory, replaced by uncertainty and discord. As the days turned into months, Okonkwo's despair grew. He saw his life's work unraveling, his achievements overshadowed by the relentless march of change. The traditions he had fought so hard to uphold seemed to be slipping away, replaced by foreign customs and laws. He spent long hours alone, reflecting on his past and the choices he had made. His thoughts often turned to his father, Onoka, whose failures had driven Okonkwo to strive for greatness. Now, in his moments of solitude, he wondered if he had truly succeeded, or if he had simply traded one set of failures for another. The legacy he had hoped to build was crumbling, and with it, his sense of purpose. The villagers, too, felt the weight of the past. The younger generation, caught between the old and new, struggled to find their place. The elders, once the keepers of wisdom, now seemed out of touch with the rapidly changing world. The community that had once been united was now fractured, each person grappling with their own version of the truth. The final blow came when Nwoye, now a committed Christian, returned to Umuofia as an evangelist. He preached fervently, urging his former neighbors to embrace the new faith. His presence was a constant reminder to Okonkwo of the changes he could not accept. The sight of his son, once a source of pride and now a symbol of everything he despised, was too much to bear. The village was a cauldron of conflicting emotions. Some saw Nwoye's return as a sign of hope and progress, while others viewed it as a betrayal of their heritage. The tension reached a boiling point, and a confrontation seemed inevitable. Okonkwo, seeing the village he had loved and fought for slipping away, made a decision. In a final act of defiance, he called a meeting of the village elders and traditionalists. He spoke passionately about their heritage and the need to resist the encroaching changes. His words were powerful, but they fell on divided ears. The community was too fractured, the wounds too deep. The next morning, Okonkwo was found dead, having taken his own life. His body hung from a tree, a tragic end to a life marked by struggle and pride. His death was a shock to the village, a stark symbol of the cost of change and the personal toll it had taken. The man who had once been a pillar of strength had succumbed to the storm he could not weather. The villagers gathered to mourn, their grief mingled with a profound sense of loss. Okonkwo's death marked the end of an era, a turning point for Umuofia. The elders, respecting tradition, could not bury him as a clansman, for suicide was an abomination. The task was left to strangers, reinforcing the sense of a community in transition. As the village moved forward, the lessons of the past weighed heavily on their minds. The storm had reshaped their world, leaving them to navigate a new landscape. The legacy of Okonkwo, complex and fraught with contradiction, remained a testament to the enduring struggle between tradition and change. In the quiet aftermath, the sun rose again over Umuofia, illuminating a village forever changed but resilient. The people, bound by a shared history and a common future, began the slow process of healing and rebuilding, carrying with them the memories of what was lost and the hope of what could be. There are a lot of lessons to be learned from this story. I would love to hear your opinion in comment section. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to like, share, and press the red button to subscribe to my channel. Bye.